please call the roll.
Good morning. Let the record reflect Commissioners Johnson, Soboroff, Figueroa Villa, and Goldsmith are present, and we have a quorum.
Thank you.
We're on item number 1, consent agenda items. We have a comment card on item 1B.
Just 1B?
Yes, sir.
I will move approval of all of the others with thanks to the donors.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve items 1A, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z.
Watch Sesame Street? You watch Sesame Street?
All in favor? Aye.
Did we get
Any opposed?
Okay. The one comment card for item number 1B, Terry Allen Wilburn. We have 2 comment cards. Terry Allen Wilburn and Pastor Q. John Marie, and this is relative to the travel authority for the Chief of Police to attend the Major Cities Chiefs Association in Las Vegas, Nevada. You meant 2B? Okay. That's Pastor Q. Okay. How about Terry Allen Wilburn on 1B?
My name is Terry Wilburn. My name is Terry Wilburn. I'm the commission and everyone. I don't know what real travel is for.
Hold on for a second, I don't think the mic's working yet. We'll give you the folks.
Okay. Okay. I don't know. Oh, okay, it is. I don't know the full extent of the chief going to Las Vegas, but I do know that the chief out there and the judges and the FBI have been lied to based on a median and others in Burbank received documentation, and they are out there with the Black Lives Matter, Hamilton, Johnson, Watson, and they murder an officer who is in fact was involved in the massacre of black people here in Burbank, taken from Los Angeles. Also in Davis, there are some people. So I really don't approve of it because on the simple fact FBI cards, U.S. attorney cards, and other cards and badges are being placed, and these people are getting uniforms out that way. So the chief must rely on the fact that it is a dangerous period if they kill already police officers and come back here to Burbank and then go back out there and all the bombings that they did since 2 years ago. And there are bombs there, placed there now in the police commission, in the FBI, in the various different places of entertainment. As you could notice, twice in Paris and English, there was bombs. These people get these bombs, and they get them and travel, and they set them up. So that's my advice to the chief when they do take the travel.
There are no other comment cards on this item.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion to approve item 1B? Do I have a second? Second. Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, great.
And please let the record reflect Commissioner McLean Hill is now present. We're now on item number 2, regular agenda items. Item number 2I has been removed from the agenda, okay. And we have comment cards on 2A and 2B.
Okay, thank you. Before we start the regular agenda items, in light of the terrorist attack yesterday, I'd like to take a moment of silence for all the victims and their families of that attack. Thank you. So we have comments on, you said
2A and 2B.
2A and 2B, okay. I think there are a number of items here that we don't need reports on unless any of my fellow commissioners disagree. Would any of my fellow commissioners like reports on items 2C, D, H, J, or K?
I'll move those items.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a second? Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's go to item 2A, please.
2A.
If we could have the,
Okay, 2A, Department's verbal presentation and discussion relative to the policy, guidelines, and training for special weapons and tactics personnel to utilize aerial platform.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Commissioner Johnson, Commissioners, Chief Beck, Mr. Teefank, Mr. Bustamante. Thank you for your time today in hearing this presentation, which we've prepared for you. I'm accompanied by the Assistant Commanding Officer of Counterterrorism and Special Operations Bureau, and that's Commander Ed Prokop. Ed, thank you for joining me today.
morning.
We're here to discuss the LAPD's aerial platform technique known as APS. And it is quite succinctly the merger of dual disciplines of skilled aviation specialists and highly trained and experienced tacticians. The uniting of aerial and SWAT resources in a strategic tactic developed to jointly work at stopping an extraordinary threat in extremely challenging circumstances not effectively handled through traditional means will be discussed with you here today in 6 parts. And those parts will be a background, criteria for use, factors to consider, the authorization process, training, and use of force. We'll begin with a little background. The post-9/11 law enforcement discussion became prominent about dealing with encounters of armed persons in areas where the suspect has a clear advantage, be it through weaponry, terrain, location, or lack of access for traditional law enforcement tools and tactics. Years earlier, in 1972, New Orleans had an incident. It was the Essex shooting at Howard Johnson's hotel, where a suspect had high ground and was able to monopolize on that opportunity to kill 7 people and injure 12 others in an 11-hour rampage. And he was armed with a .44 Magnum carbine rifle. And it got law enforcement, even back then, over 40 years ago, thinking about how it would handle a situation if somebody had that position of advantage, weaponry advantage, and also the high-rise advantage as well. So years later, a couple years after 9/11, the department spent time, energy in developing the APS system. And that's a tactic which was truly hitting the ground as far as the development phase in and around 2004. Since 2012, there have been 4 instances in which the APS system was staged. That means it was ready to go, sitting on the ground with the appropriate assets, the appropriate command and control, if it were to be used in a situation that will meet the following criteria that I'll discuss with you. It was not launched. It remained on the ground, but it was ready to be deployed if necessary. But it's important for us to discuss the criteria for use of the APS system. And that's the presence of an extreme officer safety concern, a significant threat requiring immediate action, and a situation where traditional means would be ineffective, impractical, or significantly delayed. So the factors to consider when we're talking about the APS system and when deciding whether or not it should even be brought into the tactical discussion, these are some of the things we look at. Is there a crime of violence? Are there extraordinary, challenging circumstances above and beyond what would normally be dealt with? Very critical here, does the suspect have the advantage of using an elevated platform, a challenging venue, or terrain to his advantage over officers, making traditional approaches for ground troops to be rendered or believed to be unsafe. Other situations could be vehicle interdiction. An example would be if an individual was driving a vehicle and had some form of WMD, IED, or explosives. And also, very significantly, in the thought process and consideration, does the suspect have superior weaponry or the access to superior weaponry that is readily available, or the presence of body armor? Also important to this discussion is taking a look at the authorization process of APS. Counterterrorism and Special Operations Bureau came out with two publications, one April 24th, 2015, and a revision to that September 21st, 2016. As part of those notices, it must be noted that there's a multi-layered command and control process that evaluates even the thought of deploying APS, and it doesn't just occur at the outset, it continues throughout the entire incident from beginning to end. So it spans the initial request and consideration of APS for staging through actual deployment each and every time. So let me go over systematically what that does look like. The request for APS missions shall be reviewed by the commanding officer of Air Support Division. Then, concurrently with that review by the commanding officer of Air Support Division, the Metropolitan Division commanding officer will also take a look at the criteria. And they will jointly and concurrently come to an agreement or not if APS should be staged. Then, the commanding officer of Counterterrorism and Special Operations Bureau will be notified and given the opportunity then to hear all of the aspects of it, all of the decision-making pieces, and if he or she approves the request, then APS will move forward from the staging process. The APS mission will be coordinated and approved on scene by the incident commander. So while you have the process of Air Support CO approval, Metropolitan Division, CTSOB, then the incident commander, once notified that APS is in play, still has the opportunity to make the decisions whether or not APS will actually fly into this incident and be deployed in any particular manner. So all of those layers are there in place. Once in the air, it's very critical to emphasize that there's also a command and control airship in addition to the APS aircraft. So you have not only eyes and ears and skill on the ground in the form of the incident commander, but you also continue to have it in the air in the command and control airship. So I think those levels are very important for me to delineate. And the constant evaluation that goes through this process. At any time, the APS can be told, return to staging, land there, and that's the end of it for that part of the equation. Let me talk a little bit about training so that you can have a general awareness of what it takes to be even considered as part of the cadre for APS. So there are two entities, as I stated, that are involved in working jointly in any APS operation, and that's Air Support Division and Metropolitan Division, more specifically, Special Weapons and Tactics Team, SWAT. Air Support and SWAT train together. This is extremely important. They have to have mutual confidence in each other's ability not only to communicate, but also to trust each other's judgment, maturity, and professionalism. And very, very importantly, and I want to underscore this here, is also the professionalism to abort a mission if it is deemed to be unsafe for any reason. Training consists of both live fire and realistic scenarios in many venues so we can get the opportunity to test urban environments, high rises, buildings, rooftops, etc. And that challenge needs to remain strong to keep those in the cadre flexible and ready for any particular situation that may arise. For the Air Support Division pilots authorized to fly in an APS mission, there are special training requirements which certify a pilot for duty. And I have actually looked at, as has Commander Prokop, the training records that specifically are kept to ensure that training is not only current and completed, but up to professional aviator standards. I'd like to go over some of that ASD pilot training for you. There's 3 phases. The first includes a flight assessment review, where a cadre instructor pilot who is seasoned in the APS techniques will assess the candidate, look at their flying skills, look at their maturity, look at their professionalism, the entire package and skill set. Phase 2 includes the pilot that is interested in being part of this APS program to fly a minimum of 5 training missions with the cadre instructor pilot. And this also takes place with SWAT cadre members scheduled twice a month, and this is subject to change based on weather, other mission priorities, etc. Because we have those other factors of weather or other missions that may take place, the process of having an APS pilot certified could take up to 11 months, because we're talking about 5 missions that they have to successfully train in and be told that they have accomplished that skill set. Phase 3, the APS pilot candidate is given what we call the EPF, which is the Emergency Procedures Flight, where they are tested in all types of emergency situations they could or may encounter during an APS mission. This includes looking at power lines, weight restrictions, power loss, and anything else that would deal with terrain issues that would prove challenging to any accomplished pilot. If Phase 3 is not passed, there is no certification for this pilot to be part of this cadre. It's extremely grueling and rigorous, and if they cannot pass that emergency procedures flight specification and curriculum, they are not part of this cadre. Recurrent training is scheduled 2 times each 28-day period, which is our deployment period. Recertification every 6 months, and a flight with a command pilot instructor every 90 days. And as I said before, those records are maintained, reviewed not only by air support supervisors and commanding officers, but also by CT SOB command staff. Let me also talk briefly here about the SWAT training. A primary and secondary SWAT supervisor has been tasked with overseeing and supervising the APS program. Bi-monthly qualification for the sniper cadre members is required. There's no budging on that. All of the sniper cadre is trained and deployable on APS missions. Sniper shooting range training and qualification is logged and documented, checked not only by the individual officer and their immediate supervisor, but by Metropolitan Division command staff and CTSOB command staff. The APS training days vary in length, but there could be up to, and approximately looking at the last few years average, 18 to 20 a year. And they again are in different challenging terrains, different environments, so that they can be prepared for whatever the ultimate mission may provide. If any requirement is not met by a member of the sniper cadre, they cannot be part of that cadre, and they cannot be part of any APS operation. Now I'd like to talk about use of force. And this is the key point, I believe, to this discussion and concerns. APS is not pre-approved deadly force. I'll say that again. APS is not pre-approved deadly force. It is a different platform where the same policy on lethal force applies. For example, akin to deploying a sniper on a rooftop, an elevated platform, or to maximize a position of advantage for law enforcement, or when a SWAT officer is deployed in one of our armored vehicles. Its deployment authorization is not an automatic green light for lethal force. Each shot, if taken, must be assessed given the situation that that officer is seeing and facing at the time of use. The use of force criteria remains exactly the same as it is for any other force option on the Los Angeles Police Department, the California Penal Code, department policy, and Graham versus Connor. Again, it must be underscored that throughout the deployment, there remains significant command and control on the air and the ground. Assessments and reassessments take place continuously during an operation. In conclusion, APS remains a tactical tool used in situations meeting an extremely specific criteria used by highly trained officers. The decision to utilize it is screened at the highest levels and then continuously assessed for applicability throughout an incident with a strict command and control structure. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah. I think you said, correct me if I'm wrong, that there's only been 4 times in the past, I don't know how many years, that this has been put into, that the bell has been rung.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes, that's correct.
How many years did you say?
That was beginning in 2014. No, excuse me,
I'm sorry.
2012.
Okay.
2012.
And
So
can you
since
descri-
2012, 4 stagings of APS.
And can you describe those situations without breaching any? I mean, I would imagine San Bernardino would have been one of those.
We were not involved in the San Bernardino incident, but the sheriffs could, of course, speak to that, Mr. Sobroff. But I'll just kind of generally outline what those situations were. Staging is when the aircraft is still on the ground, again, prepared and ready for use. But when we talk about the consistent and continuous review process of should APS actually been launched, I think this underscores how seriously we take that.
Launched, you mean by the
Leave the
taking
ground.
off. Yeah, okay.
Actually leaving the ground. In the situations, in the 4 that APS was staged and not actually flying over an incident, ground troops or situations changed where there was a reassessment at all levels, where also the incident commander managing the ground resources said APS is not needed, we don't have to go to that level, and or ground troops were able to take care of a situation prior to the launching of APS. So I think it's important, as you ask your question, for us to take a look at the levels of review that don't just happen at the beginning and the end of any discussion of APS, but throughout that process. So if we don't need to have that aircraft leave the ground, even though it is fully prepared to do so, it will not.
And so what you're saying is it hasn't. I mean, has it ever left the ground?
It did on May 8th.
You're right, on the May 8th.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Can you call the comment on this item, please?
We have 6 comment cards. We start with Audrey George, Jamie Garcia, Prentice Jenkins.
I wanted to say that I've noted that there was absolutely no specificity, I think probably intentional, about what they're referring to by the craft, the aerial platform. You know, are you talking about like helicopters such as that one that was deployed in Sunland earlier this month? You know, you talk about this being part of a counterterrorism effort, but we've learned from like suspicious activity reporting that whenever you have something that is supposed to target terrorism, they always add in there that it targets criminal activity as well. So we're very suspicious of this. There's also leaves a lot of room for questions about whether you could end up dumping the drone program into this aerial platform program. And, you know, aside from killing people, there's also a lot of room there for, you know, which I know supposedly has many layers of authority that it needs to go to. How much authority does someone need to use these aerial platforms for surveillance, for enhanced surveillance? of the communities in this city. So there's many questions that just aren't answered by this report, and I believe it was intentionally vague so that we wouldn't know what types of aircraft you're talking about.
Jamie Garcia.
So I think we can clarify that we are talking about helicopters. The aerial platforms are attached to helicopters, and these platforms are not used for surveillance, and we do not have a drone
No, it's
program.
not true. They're used in predictive. Helicopters are used in predictive policing.
Helicopters, not the platforms.
But let's be clear about how helicopters are used in our communities. So I wanted to kind of echo what's happening here in discussions with my comrade Audrey that came up. So we're curious if this conversation's being had because of what happened in Sutherland. And that's pretty much what we came to a consensus, that there needs to be some type of response to the fact that this is the first time you've shot and killed someone from the air. And I wanted to echo your comment about troops on the ground. So that's how our community is seen. You're actually a military force on the ground looking at us. So this all ties into your counterterrorism approach. And it's very important for us to, again, echo that it's not only counterterrorism, but you're also looking at criminal activity. So we're all incorporated into that. And the way that we're seeing surveillance programs play out is that you're targeting African Americans. The Suspicious Activity Reporting Program is targeting African Americans, and particularly African American women, as being seen as suspicious. So when we start to put this all together, let's see who the impact is really on. So we had the Air Force develop helicopters in 1956. So now we're moving into drones into 2014. And the community came out very strongly, not only about helicopters, but they're coming out strongly against drones. The 3,000 signatures saying to drop the drone program, destroy the drones, get them out of the Inspector General's office and just send them back home, destroy them, get rid of them, we don't want them. So helicopters are also involved in predictive policing. So we know that they're deployed as a deterrence factor. So as you're creating your hotspots, we know that the skies are filled with an Air Force constantly watching us. Now we know that they will shoot us as well. So, and then let's go back to drones. Now, what is the process of what's going on with drones? We know in Connecticut, they're arming their drones with lethal weapons. Again, a mechanism to shoot and to kill us. We know that North Dakota has armed their drones with non-lethal weapons, which we know, tasers, we know rubber bullets, all have the ability to kill us, to maim us, to harm us. So I really want us to start to, just put this whole picture together. Reports are nice. Verbal reports are interesting. You come up, you talk about yourself as a military force, but we really need to put the whole picture together and see how these, how helicopters, how drones are really building your Air Force to harm us, to murder us, and we don't want them in our communities.
Prentice Jenkins, followed by Hamid Khan.
Prentice Jenkins, Peace Between Residents and Police. Good morning, President Johnson, Vice President Soberoff.
Good morning.
Board, Chief. I'd like to say I'm thrilled to see this many women in positions of authority in the LAPD. Women are 50% of the workforce and 80% of the brain trust in any country. I am troubled by the fact that we're going to use helicopters to start shooting at people. I mean, I believe that that's under the guise of strafing, and strafing is illegal in the United States. If you shoot from an aerial craft, it's called strafing, and that's illegal. You can't strafe in the United States. The Special Weapons and Tactics Unit is the unit that is designed to go up there and get those psychos shooting at people at bell towers. So my suggestion is that we continue to follow the lead of the Special Weapons and Tactics Unit to go up and get those crazy fools, blowing people away who are just walking down the street. I know we need to get that idiot off the top of that building, but strafing and using helicopters, that's just not the way to do it. Because if we start with strafing, if we start with strafing, they can use high-powered weapons. We're going to end up with helicopters being armed. So you won't need the officer using the high-powered weapon anymore. All you need now is the helicopter to beam a target on there and blow him away. But if he blows him away, on a big building, glass starts breaking and it falls and it kills people down that are down on the sidewalk. I mean, this is the strafing from helicopters is terrifying.
Hamid Khan, followed by Virginia Harris and Gina DiPietro.
So welcome to the LAPD Air Force. And this is what we need to call, we need to cut through the bullshit, and we need to go directly to the point that this is what an Air Force looks like. This is how an Air Force operates. This is what an Air Force looks like. Because there is a war on people in the city of Los Angeles. A war being waged by this police department, which also happens to be the most murderous police department in the country. Right? And none of these people, I mean, Shane Goldsmith and all can use all their Liberty Hill social justice bullshit and bring people here and just to try to intimidate people. The point being, this is not going to change the reality on the ground. We've been doing research. We've been tracking them. There have been 5 times that LAPD helicopters have crashed. You're not going to hear anything about that. In 1966, in 1974, in 1976, in 1983, 1991, and now they are bringing drones. This is all drama that is being set up to bring drones in our lives. That's basically where this is going. Helicopters are used through high-definition cameras to surveil on people. Helicopters are used to go over various warehouses in South Central Los Angeles for predictive policing. I have written an op-ed in the Guardian newspaper about the predictive policing use and helicopters, and none of you have a clue what we are talking about because you don't read, you don't do your homework. Right? And this is what the fact is on the ground. The state of North Dakota in 2015 passed legislation that police helicopters can be equipped with non-lethal weapons, with rubber bullets, with tasers, with mace, and various other things. The state of Connecticut is right now arguing right now where they want to equip police drones with lethal weapons. Right? In 14 states, there are 36 anti-protester bills passing, giving police extraordinary amount of power. Last week in Congress, they introduced back the Blue Act. There are several Blue Lives Matter Act bills that are moving through Congress and legislations as well. So do not buy this because they are setting it up for drones, and just as people are being killed and murdered all around the world by somebody sitting in Las Vegas, in Nevada, in dropping missiles over people.
Thank you for your comments,
people sitting
Mr.
in this
Khan.
building, dropping bullets over our bodies. So let's stop this right now.
Virginia Harris.
Good morning, everyone. I found it really curious that the example that you gave us of a time when the helicopter was used was 40 years ago, when one happened on May 8th, just this month, in Sunland. And the person that was killed in that incident was a person who had apparently or allegedly broken into someone's home. The woman in the home was able to escape unharmed. Tear gas was shot into the house. The suspect supposedly came out the door and was then shot and killed by the helicopter. Well, I correct that. Shot by all the police that were there. And it is suspected that the bullet that actually killed him was a bullet from the helicopter. So you're telling us now that you're asking permission to get approval to be able to do this when you have already done it. And you're telling us also that as fleeing suspects from an incident, we now already are getting shot and killed as fleeing suspects. So now we'll have helicopters shooting down on us as we're fleeing from a scene, whether we're armed or unarmed or dangerous or not dangerous. So I'm opposed to this. I think all of our community is opposed to this. We're already militarized, substantially militarized, and now you're going to fly over us and shoot at us as we're no telling what we're doing, but you see whatever you see from the helicopter and decide that it's an illegal activity or something that's harmful to the police in the helicopter, and shoot down on us and kill us. We should all be opposed to this, and if we're not opposed to this, then we're setting ourselves up to be murdered even more so than we already are being murdered by the police. This murderous police department, the most murderous police department in the country.
Gina DiPietro.
Hi, I'm Gina DiPietro, and I spent most of last night praying for the victims of the terrorist attack in Manchester, and God bless them, and God bless the law enforcement trying to protect them. I think we should give SWAT what they want when it comes to this tool, and that's what it is. It's a particular tool. Like Baker has like a rolling pin, and also and dishes. You have many tools, and this is just one tool that is utilized very, very seldom.
Hold the clock, please. Hold on 1 second. Excuse me. Every speaker is entitled to their 2 minutes, uninterrupted. If you have something you'd like to say, submit a card. You can have your 2 minutes. But everyone has the right to their opinion and to express their thoughts in a manner that's uninterrupted. If you disrupt the meeting, you will be asked to leave, because everybody is entitled to their opportunity to have a public comment, whether you or I or anyone else agrees or disagrees with them.
Thank you, President Johnson. You know, you and I actually have something in common. My background is in the entertainment industry. And in the entertainment industry, I worked in motion capture technology. And right now, I think we're at a state also where we should give SWAT what they want, but also think in decades. Think in terms of the future, which does in fact include drones. This is like ignoring the iPod in the music industry. You can't do it. We need to keep up with the droneses. You got me? We need to make sure that we have people on the LAPD who are certified with the new technology that's coming about, because motion capture technology and drones have in fact come together. There's a beautiful video on YouTube with the motion capture electromagnetic sensors, which are those little silver dots, and drones, and they do ballet together. So we're at that point where it's that precise already with drones and motion capture. So we've added another element of technology. So it's important that we think in decades and we think to the future as a city for our own protection. Thank you so much.
Karen Lane. Is there someone named Karen Lane? Okay, I'm sorry? 2B? Okay. Okay, we have no other comment cards on this item.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, we're now on item number 2B, Executive Director's Report dated May 17, 2017, relative to the Board of Police Commissioners community meetings.
Good morning, Mr. President.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. President, members of the Commission. The report I'll be giving is in response to requests from Commissioner Cynthia McLean Hill and other commissioners at the March 21st meeting to evaluate the resources necessary for out of the boardroom evening community meetings, and also ways that the Commission can be more transparent with its actions. Give a little bit of background. The Commission's meeting schedule for years has been Tuesdays at 9:30 a.m. That process was in place in the former police administration building known as Parker Center, in the boardroom in that building, and then also when we transitioned to this building in October of 2009, that time frame was kept. There have been periodic times when there have been meetings outside of this facility over the years, and those have been in various sections of the communities, have generally been hosted by a city council member representing that council district, and included the area captains and bureau chiefs to give crime data information to the community and to gain community input. The Commission has historically met every Tuesday at 9:30 a.m., as I said, with the exception of the Monday after Labor Day, the Monday after Memorial Day, Tuesday after Thanksgiving Day, and the last 2 weeks in December. All of the Police Commission meetings are videotaped and shown on LA City View by Channel 35 as required by the City Council. And those also include the community meetings. We've also had meetings outside of this room in the recent past. We have had 3 recent meetings, November 15, 2016, April 4, 2017, and last week, utilizing the Board of Public Works public hearing room for those special meetings. And those meetings took place at 9:30 a.m. Also, the Commission every week has to go to closed session to adjudicate categorical use of force cases. Those adjudication times require technology presentations by the by the Force Investigation Division detectives, discussion about those cases, and that necessarily, by the nature of the technology, are facilitated in this building. So the commission has to do those about every week. This week is unusual. We do not have any. And over the year, on average, for the past 4 years, there have been 88 of those type of cases over the weeks that have to be adjudicated. Community meetings in the past have been held either at 6 or 6:30 p.m., as I mentioned, throughout various council districts and geographic areas in the city. They traditionally have been held at public facilities, such as park and recreation centers, school sites, and community centers, to take advantage of the fact that they are usually centrally located, have sufficient parking, and provide us with a venue that is regionally located to that geographic area and council district. The attendance at those meetings varies. I would say the average attendance, based on the years that I have attended them, is approximately 30 members. Could be some more at others and some less at other meetings. Staffing resources that are taken for these particular meetings include administrative staff from the Board of Police Commissioners, Commission Secretary, other staff necessary to run the meetings, sworn staff from Commission Investigation Division, stenographer, along with the resources of Channel 35 and also the resources of the city's technology folks to put up the microphones that we have for the facilities that we go to. On average, the community meetings cost $6,300 to have per meeting based on the staffing resources that are required. In addition to that, the local geographic commanders generally will have officers there to assist in any questions that come up related to service desires from the community members, and also to just be at the location. And those resources come from the local division and not anything related to what we provide through the commission. Transparency. Currently the commission agendas are posted on the department website, on the city website, and again, community meetings, any commission meeting can be seen on Channel 35. We're proposing that a number of additional actions be taken to enhance transparency. Currently, when a categorical use of force case is adjudicated, the Inspector General will prepare a abridged summary of that incident and post it on the LAPD online website. We're going to be recommending that there be a link directly to that, so it'll be easy access for a member of the community to get that rather than have to go to the LAPD website. They could go right to our Twitter account and get that. Also link the videos of the meetings to the Twitter account, so there could be a direct link to access the videos of the meetings. In addition to that, we're also looking at taking and creating a situation where we would generate a sheet that would be on our Twitter account that would show those pending significant reports that are be coming back to the commission with the anticipated date they will be coming back. The department has recently added to the LAPD online website a use of force tab, which is in the upper right-hand corner. In that tab, one can click on and get the most recent information on a use of force case, location, date, involved parties, and the most recent press information released about that incident. As a result, I have 5 recommendations for the commission to consider. Every other month, there'll be a regular commission meeting held outside of the commission meeting room with a goal of having 6 meetings per year. The first meeting to be held in September of 2017. The reason for September, as the commissioners are well aware, as we enter into the summer months, there's a number of meetings that will not take place because of lack of quorum and other business. So I would recommend that we would start those in September. It will also provide sufficient time for site acquisition, coordination with City Council office and geographic area to identify locations. In addition to that, we would have at least 3 single-issue meetings outside of the police headquarters facility boardroom. So we'd have 6 community meetings and 3 additional meetings. A link be placed on the Commission Twitter account for the Inspector General's abridged summaries, as I mentioned. Also, that we would post on our Twitter link Commission agendas, prepare a report which will identify significant upcoming reports of the Commission. And also, what I would suggest is that we consider a process where if we're going to have a report of significance, that we would have the report on the agenda. We would then continue to report for 1 to 2 weeks at the Commission's direction to allow for community feedback and input, and then bring the report back for final action. And those conclude my recommendations. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions?
No questions at this time, but I would like to say before taking public comment that I, from the first day on this commission, among the things that's been reflected back from this, from people in attendance and people throughout the community, is a desire to have the commission conduct its business in locations closer to where community members can participate. I've also observed that this commission has increasingly suggested and in fact required that the department itself work to be both more transparent and more collaborative and available to community members in terms of how they conduct their work. I believe that it is critically important that we model the transparency and the collaboration and the standards that we are seeking to hold the department to. I want to acknowledge the partnership of Commissioner Goldsmith in connection with working with Mr. Teefank in developing these recommendations. I also want to acknowledge and to highlight the input from community members, a number of whom are represented in the audience today, in both their continued advocacy and in meetings where they put forward what they viewed as the bedrock values around which we should structure our community engagement. Those included a permanent avenue for democratic engagement, quality interaction with the community that informs the commission, and transparency and trust. I think that those are principles that we can all embrace. I believe that this is an important first step in walking down the road toward greater access, transparency, and collaboration with the community, and frankly, believe that it is this commission's role to both consider and promulgate policy for the department, but also to serve as a bridge for interaction both internally with internal and external stakeholders. So with that, I want to say thank you to the Commissioner Goldsmith. Thank you to Mr. Teefank for this report, and also thank you to those community members who have labored to make this step possible.
Commissioner Johnson, can I add something? I just want to also thank my colleague on the commission, Commissioner McLean-Hill, for your leadership on this, and Mr. Teefank for your work to put this report forward. I want to thank the department for your work to continue to increase community engagement and transparency, and also want to thank community members, many of whom are here today, for your work to raise important issues and to collaborate with us.
Okay, hold on a second. Can we please stop disrupting the meeting? Professor Abdullah, Mr. Khan, in the hat back there. If you can, please stop. If you hear something you disagree with, submit a card, and you will have your 2 minutes. But we give everyone who submits a card the respect of listening to them. Please give the people who are presenting and the people on this dais the respect of hearing them out. Professor Abdullah, that's your last warning. Please stop disrupting the meeting. That's your last warning. And Mr. Khan, so you've all been warned now multiple times. Please stop disrupting the meeting.
Mr. President.
Sorry.
Thank you. Commission President. Again, I just, to finish my thought, want to thank many of you in the audience and those who are not here for collaborating with the Commission to raise these issues and to work with us to increase community engagement, to work together with us to make the city safe, to build trust between community and police, and to make the police department the best it can be. I know we all firmly believe that people, everyday Angelinos who are directly interacting with the police department, need to be engaged in helping us to make it the best department it can be. So I thank you for your work on that, and this is an important step forward, and I look forward to continued collaboration.
Thank you. Any other comments from my fellow commissioners? Thank you. Well, we have to listen to comment first.
Okay, we have 13 comment cards. The first 4, Pastor Q, Jean Marie, Karen Hilfman, Paula Miner, and Christine Gatson.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Pastor Q, Jean Marie. Speaking of these meetings, meetings should not just be accessible, but they should also be relevant. How will these 6 meetings be relevant to the community? Today's meeting is not relevant because Measure C is not on the agenda. Speaking of transparency, you guys placed Measure C on the ballot, and it was never on the agenda for discussion at the public commission meetings. We've been coming for 2.5 years. It was never on the agenda, which means you never cared. Speaking of transparency, how is it Commissioner McLean publicly supported Measure C, but it never made it to the agenda? Yes, I'm angry. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, they threw black and brown communities under the bus with Measure C. That's exactly what happened. And now you guys are coming in here playing good Negro, bad Negro. We're sick of this mess. This was not accountability. You did not care. All of the groups who supported or who were against Measure C, if your group, I don't care why you came here today, but if your community group was against Measure C, stand up. The ACLU did not support Measure C. The mayor, for 2 years, with the police union, made a deal with the police union, and the mayor and the city council, Herb Wesson, made a deal with the police union. I can't even speak. I'm so angry. And threw black and brown communities under the bus. As a black man and as a pastor, you guys always say, well, you know, all police officers aren't bad. But the Bible tells me a little leaven leavens the whole lump. And if there's no accountability to take the yeast out of the bread before it blows up, then the whole lump will be contaminated.
Karen Hilfman.
So while the efforts to break the mold are commendable, the results at best are anemic and at worst tokenism, pure window dressing, nominal compliance with any kind of commitment to democratic civilian oversight. 6 meetings a year is less than 15% of the Commission's meetings, and at that rate, it will take 4 years to make 1 round of all the police bureaus in 15 council districts. It's not enough, and September isn't soon enough. If this minimal movement is because change is hard, then a real proposal would have included that by the 2nd year, 50% of the meetings would be in the community, and by the 3rd year, 100% of the meetings would be in the community. In addition, all areas of town and police activity are not equal. Black and brown communities that are disproportionately harmed and over-policed should be prioritized for more frequent input and feedback. I've said this before, that policing without representation is occupation. And I'm reminded about what we heard several months ago about a mother who had to tell her college-age son not to come home anymore for visits because of the danger posed by the LAPD. Hopefully, the saying that Martin Luther King Jr. popularized about the arc of the moral universe and history being long but bending toward justice is true. But remember, the arc doesn't bend by itself. It takes people like us and you to bend it.
Paula Miner, Black Lives Matter.
Good morning.
First of all, I'd like to say to Commissioner Shane and Cynthia, I truly resent the fact that you would not acknowledge that Black Lives Matter is a member of the community, and we have been attending commission meetings regularly since 2014, since the murder of Ezell Ford, and in virtually each of those meetings, we have asked for accessibility and change in time and location of the meeting. So, you know, even though you think it's cute to say the community's here and the community has not been here for 2.5 years, shame on you. Black Lives Matter has been advocating for this, and I acknowledge Mr. T. Fink's report that this is a step forward. We are still interested in all meetings being in the community. When you talk about accessibility, accountability, transparency, it should be all official meetings. And hopefully, as you say, this is a beginning, but we'd like to have the continuing schedule so that if the first step is 6, when will the next step be? You know, and I also feel if there's any additional cost, this is one area, you know, not being funny, where you can ask for those donors, especially the Dodgers, to come up with $6,000 every meeting, because we're their constituency too. The police are the Dodgers fans, and we are the Dodgers fans. Thank you.
Christine Gatson, followed by Alberto. Ritana.
Shane, you thanked some of the community members for being here, saying that it's a step towards building trust between the department and the community, but it's going to take more than 6 meetings to build trust between the department and the community. And maybe if you were really interested in doing that, you guys would stop murdering people. I understand that the person who gave the report said that no meetings could happen until September because you couldn't get any business done with a lack of quorum. I get that summer is upon us and y'all want to get off on your vacations, but that's not a good enough reason to delay the business of this department. There's no excuse for waiting until September to have the first community meeting. It's really difficult to believe in a city as large as ours and with as many resources as we have that it would take 4 months to find an acceptable place. And I agree with Ms. Paula, if money is an issue, I mean, shit, if the Dodgers can give you $7,000 for a little cadet party, surely they can facilitate a meeting place. While it's mildly encouraging that more accessible meetings will be implemented, it's very disheartening that they will be so infrequent, accounting for only 11% of weekly meetings. At the very least, a majority of your meetings should be accessible community meetings. The only reason not to do so lies in your comfort and convenience, which is quite frankly an irrelevant consideration. It is your job to do the business of this department, which includes making yourself accountable to the general public. It may be inconvenient for you to have to drive to various parts of the city, but it's even more inconvenient for a community of 4 million people to get to meetings on a Tuesday morning. The onus to make these meetings more acceptable is on you, not on the community, to get to these meetings at a time and place most convenient for you. And I'm interested to know that if, when these meetings are held in hopefully much larger venues, if you will maintain your 1-to-7 cop-to-citizen ratio in order to continue your campaign of intimidation toward anyone who dares question you.
Alberto, followed by Charisse Bremond and Jed Perriott.
Good morning.
Good morning. First wanted to just make an acknowledgement of those whose shoulders we stand on. John Mack, Downey Bakewell, Michael Zinzin, Connie Rice, Karen Bass, many others who have taken on this issue decades ago. Also want to acknowledge that over the last 2.5 years, BLMLA has created the space for organizations like Community Coalition to be up here with you all to have this conversation. We submitted a list of recommendations that included the bedrock principles that Commissioner McLean-Hill spoke about, which I won't repeat, but thank you for acknowledging them. That proposal included not only meetings, and I should say that it's our vision at Community Coalition as well, that we can celebrate a day when all meetings are in our neighborhoods. We submitted a list of recommendations that included resources, agenda setting, and new protocols, some of which is reflected in the report. We were hopeful that Mr. Tiefank's report today, we had a good meeting a couple weeks ago, we brought together the most dynamic group of community organizers the city has, folks from BLMLA, Community Coalition, SCOPE, SEIU 2015, SEIU 721, Black Worker Center, Brotherhood Crusade, LA CAN, Advancement Project, to make this proposal. We were hoping for a robust strategy presented today. While today's recommendations do not go far enough, in our opinion, we do urge you to support the recommendations on the table, as we do see them as a step forward. The time is of concern. Obviously, getting clarification on what it means to be a significant issue is really important. We are preparing a report that we will be presenting to you all in June that will be data-based, evidence-based, that we hope can be influential in how we move forward. We don't think this is the last conversation. We think this is an important first step forward. We look forward to partnering with you all and to continue to mobilize our community in support of this work. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Sharice Bramon Weaver, President and CEO of the Brotherhood Crusade.
Good morning.
Really would like to acknowledge BLM for the 2.5 years that they have been on the front line. We are here at the table today because of their leadership, their ongoing fight, and holding everyone accountable in this space when we weren't here. So I want to thank you all for being. As your last speaker mentioned, this is a first step. It's not the whole step. We really need to take a look at how we represent our community to have access and transparency at all times. It is not fair and it is not right for our commission meetings to be here at 9:30 a.m. on a Tuesday. When you care about the community, when you represent 10,000 community residents in South LA, that's Brotherhood Crusade alone. That's no other partner. They should have a voice. They should be able to share their thoughts, their concerns. They should not worry about parking. They should not worry about paying for parking. They need to be able to really, really share the depth of what is happening in our community with law enforcement. So we feel that, yes, this is a first step, but we have to do more. We have to do outreach. You're having a meeting in September. And if we don't provide the resources and outreach, then of course we'll have 10 people from the community. So when you look at a budget of $6,000, that's minimal. It's minimal when our community deserves so much more. So when you look at this and you approve this, please make sure we have the resources for transparency. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jed Perriott, followed by Tiffany Guerra.
Jed Perriott, DSA. So just to briefly go back to SWAT, just so you guys know, Daryl Gates created the SWAT team. It was originally an acronym for Special Weapons Attack Team. Attack Team, which says a lot because you guys protect and serve affluent white communities while attacking and oppressing poor black and brown ones. And it's hard for us to believe in any oversight suggested by you guys, because we know that behind closed doors, your palms are getting greased by military contractors, private prisons, politicians, developers, so you can continue to grease the gears on the carousel of oppression that spins and spins and spins while you make a profit. And Commissioner Johnson, I saw that you you gave a speech honoring Dr. King. You could believe that. And you were touting that you valued that he spoke for democracy and justice, and you hoped the LAPD would follow his footsteps in leading the way for police reform across the country. If you really believed that, you would push for dismantling the architecture of surveillance. You would push for dismantling the architecture of occupation, and you would build an architecture of economic opportunity for those who need it. If you don't want to see another great uprising, we all need to come together for a great uplifting. So if you believe in justice and democracy, at the very least you will open up these meetings to the community that needs to be heard, voices that need to be heard, and that will be heard regardless of what you try and do, regardless of how much you try and oppress us. Their voices will be heard.
Okay, so I had a few comments on the section of the report marked transparency. In that section, you say a few things happen that don't actually happen. You said a summary of the action taken on agenda items here is prepared and posted to your Twitter account. That currently does not happen. You said the video in here is posted to Twitter. That's happened twice ever. You say the IG prepares an abridged summary and posts it to the website. That does not consistently happen. From 2015, for example, you currently have about 70% of the summaries from incidents posted. And from 2016, the most recent summary posted was on the case of Keith Bursey. But you all have met on 12 use of force incidents since that time, including 2 deaths in custody, and you have yet to post those summaries. The reason given for this, including requests for summaries from 2 years ago, is that your reports are backlogged and things take time. But we know how fast you can move when it comes to rolling out new surveillance or weaponry. Considering you are not transparent when it comes to deaths in custody, and it's still not clear how many deaths in custody have occurred year to year, we want to see these reports posted. In your review of best practices a few weeks ago, Bustamante, you also said that you publish a quarterly discipline report that provides detailed and extensive data about the internal disciplinary process, and that it's available on the Office for Constitutional Policing website. But in the last 10 years of this report, only one of them from the fourth quarter of 2013 has been posted, so you're not making those accessible either. And not only are you not posting all these reports that you're talking about, but whoever wrote your review, Bustamante, and your report today, TFANC, is misreporting the level of transparency. Why this matters is because we see the same thing in every aspect of what you do. You say you're doing one thing, and then it is done poorly or not at all. Lies are told, and reasons are made up as to why that happened. And you all, the board, don't know any different, so you accept what the LAPD and the IG tell you. That's why we get so frustrated in this room listening to what you say, because it's not based on what actually happens. Don't include a section of the report marked transparency if that's not based on anything that's actually going on.
The next 3 speakers, please. Melina Abdullah, Prentice Jenkins, and Hamid Khan.
So for the last almost 3 years, we've been demanding that police commission meetings be moved out of LAPD headquarters and into the community. Not 1, not 6, but all of them. All of them. This is a basic democratic principle, right? The notion of having police oversight body meetings in a militarized building where we are surrounded by police. This is now they're giving the number 1-to-7 ratio. Some weeks there are more police in this room than there are community members. And let me be clear, as Black Lives Matter, as LA Can, as SCOPE, as Church Without Walls, as Stop LAPD Spying Coalition, we are community members. So not just the people here today, we are very thankful that our partners, and let me be clear too, I know you two think that they came for you. These are our partners. These are our partners. There are members too. SEIU members can be simultaneously SEIU and Black Lives Matter. Isn't that right, y'all? community coalition members, and Black Lives Matter members. Ain't that right? So these are our community folks, right? So we want to be very clear with you. The idea of throwing us, this ain't even crumbs, this is a crumb, right? Throwing a crumb at us and acting like that's something that we should be celebrating is preposterous. And so you're not going to play us off of each other. We all believe, we are all demanding that every single meeting be moved out of here and into the community so that community members can get here, so that community members can participate. And I want to be clear also about our goal with this. It's not about building trust between the police and the community. Our goal is to create safe communities in a way that acknowledges that this does not create safety. This does not create safety. We're not going to trust police who kill us. We're not going to trust them. And your convenience doesn't take precedent over democracy. So you hear the misrepresentations that T-Fank is making? Check him on it. That's your job. He works for you, right? So this idea that y'all got to go in the back, stop killing people, you won't need as many closed sessions. How about that? How about that?
Comments.
So also, I just want to underscore $6,300. How much does this shit cost? Right? So he's talking about $6,300. How much do all of these people and all of these resources cost?
Ma'am, thank you for your comments.
Move all of them to the community.
Our next three speakers, Prentice Jenkins, Hamid Khan, and Jamie Garcia.
Prentice Jenkins, founder of Peace Between Residents and Police. I go online all the time to look at the videos because, of course, I love admiring myself in all my splendor of public comment. And I have a problem here. Maybe you can handle this, Mr. T-Fank.
Okay, stop the clock. Excuse me, if you're having a coughing fit, can you please leave the room so we can continue the meeting? Okay.
Now, Mr. T-Fank, maybe you could tell me what's going on here. When I go online to, of course, admire myself, it does this. It drops down, so I can't access the video. And I haven't been able to access the video for about a year, so I'm going through withdrawals because I can't admire myself. How do we fix this? Is there any way to go online to maybe it's just
Mr. Jenkins, it could be just your phone, sir. I don't know.
Could be my phone. Okay. All right. Okay. Wait a minute. Okay. Apparently, what happened? It's fixed. I had to turn it this way instead of sideways. Okay. I'm good now. Thank you.
Hamid Khan.
So why is it that they don't want to go into the community? They don't want people to know that this is LAPD's architecture of surveillance. This is how we are monitored, traced, and tracked, and stalked. Why don't they want to go into the community? Because what the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition, Black Lives Matter, LA Can, and various other groups have been doing is exposing the tactics and the violence before the bullet hits the body. Before the bullet hits the body. Why don't they want to go into the community regularly? Because they don't want people to know that they suck up more than 54% of the general funds from the city. A city that invests less than 0.5% in youth development. Come on now. Right? Why don't they want to go into the community? Because they don't want people to know that they are the most murderous police department in the country. Since 2011, 3 years in a row, or 3 years they have led the nation, and again they're on track on that. Why they don't want to go into the community? Because they don't want people to know that 425 reports of biased policing every year, on an average, 0 is sustained. 0. That means that they are saying to the community that they are a community of liars. They are a community. That's why they don't want to go into the community. Why they don't want to go into the community? Because they don't want people to know about Measure C's bullshit that's going to unravel soon. Why they don't want to go into the community is because, as the sister said, transparency, yeah, that would be a good idea. So what is happening is that they're throwing crumbs at us. What is happening is that they've brought people here. This is how to seed, divide, and rule. But we're not going to fall for that bullshit. We're not going to fall for that trap. Because what they're doing is that this is what's going to happen is that once every 6 months, once a year, they're going to come into the community, but that's justice delayed, community dismissed, no transparency, and murders of our communities continue.
Next
We
speaker,
don't
please.
want these crimes.
The next speaker is Jamie Garcia, followed by Karen Lane.
So first of all, there is no trust. And Shane, I think that you would understand this. I think with your own personal stories that you put out into the community, you can realize that there is no trust with law enforcement, and there isn't an attempt to make a partnership right now. So, I'm just going to move the meetings to the evening. There's no time to waste. You are the murderous law enforcement agency. There's no time to waste. We want parking. We don't want them in City Hall because obviously here you have to pay to be able to park here. So community members that want to be engaged, unless you have extra funds, you're not going to be able to be engaged. So stop with the bullshit. No police in the meetings. Again, everybody's echoing this. Why is there so many law enforcement here? Even with the Civilian Oversight Commission of the LA County Sheriffs, they have one police officer. They have one police officer there, so you can't even get yourself down to one police officer. I don't know what you're so afraid of. You are obviously afraid of the community. That's why you have so many weapons. That's why you're the most murderous law enforcement. And then this adjudication difficulty. That's really not our problem. You need to be able to have these publicly. We need to know what's going on. We need to know what technology you're using. We need to know what you're talking about, and we need to see it ourselves. And lastly, just to build off of what Hamid Khan was saying, policing is changing and people need to know. Most counterterrorism programs, or all of them, are very secretive. So this smart policing initiative, we need to start talking about it. These topics need to be relative. That is coming out of the Department of Justice, it's coming out of the Bureau of Justice Assistance, and it's changing the way policing operates. We have surveillance programs that are picking up multiple data points on people. We have algorithms that are deciding who is the most criminal. Risk assessments. What communities are most criminalized? They're pathologizing people. And then you have platforms like Palantir that are making associations. So one person, you run Palantir, find out who their friends are, find out where they go. You're able to track and trace them. We need to talk about this, Chief Beck. We need to know.
Next speaker, please.
Karen Lane.
Ms. Lane.
85% of people on strategic subject list are African American men. We need to know who they are.
Ms. Lane.
We need to release them. Stop with these shitty meetings. Make them relative.
Good morning. My name is Karen Lane. I'm the Vice President of Policy at Community Coalition. Community Coalition was founded in 1990 during the height of the crack cocaine epidemic, and for the last 26 years, we have organized thousands of residents to win policy and budget campaigns that actually invest in community-based solutions to safety and violence in South LA. Residents in South Los Angeles have a vested interest in the business of the police commission, and we have polled nearly 5,000 residents in South LA over the last 2 months and found that over 85% of those who were polled committed that they would participate and have an interest in participating in these meetings. However, the time and location is a barrier to real participation, real civic participation, and real oversight of the LAPD. There's no greater threat to safety than the mistrust that currently exists between residents and the Los Angeles Police Department. So while we see today as a step in creating avenues for real democracy and real participation, we believe that it will be a hollow commitment if there's not intentional investment in outreach and engagement. It's not enough to hold and convene a meeting in the community if there's not real investment on the part of this commission to do real outreach, to invest in contacting everyday residents to make sure that they know not only when and where the meeting is taking place, but the content of that meeting. We stand in solidarity with Black Lives Matter, Brotherhood Crusade, SEIU 2015, and a number of organizations here today who are here to commit to not only participating in the future meetings, but shaping the debate and ensuring that our constituency and base participates. So again, we stand in solidarity with the demand that all of the commission meetings should be in the community, but believing that this is a good start, but again, without real investment in an outreach and engagement, it's a hollow commitment. Thank you.
We have no other comment cards on this item, sir.
Okay, may we have a motion, or are there any comments by commissioners on the, I think we've already done.
On item 2B?
Yeah. So, go ahead.
I'm sorry, before we go to commission motion, I'd just like to sort of circle back on a couple of points first and foremost, to the extent that there was, that I was unclear or that there was a slight taken. I want to fully acknowledge that my reference to community members who have participated in, shaped, and frankly driven the discussion around this particular item includes most prominently Black Lives Matters. And in fact, as I recall, my motion with respect to this report followed on the heels of testimony provided one day by Paula Miner. So I did not mean to in any way, shape, or form indicate or suggest that those community members who are here today for the first time in making reference to community members here today to suggest that somehow I was overlooking or discrediting the work and the sustained work of Black Lives Matters around issues related to transparency, among others. Second, with respect to agenda setting, issues around resources, strategy with respect to organizing and informing community of when and where and what will be on these meetings that are held outside of this building. That work is the work that we are committed to. I am certainly committed to with the continued partnership of Commissioner Goldsmith addressing and engaging over the summer months so that when these meetings begin in September, they are taking place in a manner and addressing items that are in fact relevant to the discussions that need to take place, including discussions around surveillance, data gathering, deployment, Plantier, and a host of other items that routinely come up in this room. Finally, I'd like to point out that while there have been a number of references to 6 meetings, there are actually 9 that are being proposed that will take place outside of PAB. And while I don't want to quibble with respect to whether or not that's enough, I will acknowledge that it falls well short of the goal of 100% of the meetings outside of this room, and want to reiterate my commitment to this being a beginning, not an end, as we continue to explore and to move toward greater transparency, accessibility, and relevance in connection with and in the conduct of these meetings. And then finally, I look forward to reviewing the various items that are referenced in the report around postings and Twitter post in particular to ensure that that which has been referenced is in fact being consistently done, and do want to assure those in attendance that that which is proposed will in fact take place in the most robust way possible.
Thank you. Is there a motion on the table?
Yeah, there was.
And was there a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you. We're now on item 2E, Inspector General's report dated May 18, 2017, relative to the review of allegations classified as unbecoming conduct.
Good morning, Mr. President, members of the Commission.
Good morning.
The Los Angeles Police Department classifies misconduct allegations in 31 different categories. And in our reviews of the quarterly discipline report that you forward to us for review, we've noted that the category unbecoming conduct accounts for a little more than 20% of all of the allegations. Because that was such a high number, we looked at the unbecoming conduct allegations from the third quarter of 2015 to see if perhaps we could offer any guidance on whether maybe that section was being used broadly.
Mm-hmm.
In reviewing the allegations, we found that the department personnel who are involved in the classification include the investigating officers and internal affairs groups review and evaluation section. And those two officers have two different guides that they use in preparing the allegations. The investigating officers use a guide for supervisors, and that lists a number of examples in the front of the book about how to frame allegations under each one of those 31 classifications. At the end of the process, after the case has been adjudicated, the case goes to review and evaluation, and the sergeants there refer to a different guide in determining how to finally classify each of the allegations. In comparing those two guides, we found that at times there were differences in how they referenced unbecoming conduct. And please understand, this is a little bit of a subjective task. There is no definitive guide to tell somebody exactly how to frame an allegation. It has to be flexible depending on the circumstance. But we found that, for example, for R&E, the group at the end of the process, their guide says only use unbecoming conduct when no other classification would more specifically address the issue. That guidance isn't provided in the supervisor's reference. The supervisor's reference has probably 50 or 60 examples of allegations. And what we found were, we did a sample out of the 3,500 allegations, or complaints, that were filed in 2015. We went to the third quarter of 2015. We found 440 or so contained allegations of unbecoming conduct, and we did a sample of those and found that we felt that in about a little more than 20% of the cases that unbecoming conduct was used where there was what we thought was a more specific categorization to address the issue. And we listed those in the guide. For example, the first one is discourtesy. Even the allegation is even framed in the wording of discourtesy. So that would seem to suggest that discourtesy would be the appropriate classification for it. We forwarded our findings to Commander Maisland Internal Affairs Group. We split the difference. Out of the 16 cases that we looked at, IA answered us on 1. They disagreed on 9, and we answered back, and they agreed with us on 7. So the ultimate takeaway from this is a subjective task. We're not suggesting that we find error in the police department's work. But we are suggesting that perhaps a better course would be to use the guideline that is proposed, or that R&E uses at the end, that unless in those cases where there is a more specific category, to use that category rather than unbecoming conduct. That might help to take down the volume of cases that are cleared as unbecoming conduct. Secondly, we recommend, although we recognize that IA's two different groups have different tasks, we suggest that IA look at determining whether they can meld those two guides together so that there is not a conflict where different wording is used in a few of the examples. And thirdly, what we found in the supervisor's guide is that in a few instances, I think about 11, the same type of misconduct was categorized under two different classifications. And we are suggesting that IA look at those examples and see if those can be eliminated so that there is no redundancy or conflict, so that one employee could get one type of classification that might sound worse or better than another one, or just different. The fact employees, of course, compare what their outcomes are. And we're suggesting that in those cases where there are two or more, that I see if they can reduce those to one. Those are our recommendations. I have any available for questions if you have them.
Thank you. Was there anything the department wanted to add, or are you just here? I mean, you don't need to. I'm just if there was something you.
Well, I will add something. I mean, the issue with framing allegations, it's an art. It's really not a science. So we have a list of, it was 31 categories of different classifications of allegations that was reviewed by the Inspector General, and that list was in effect from 2003. In 2016, we modified it. It's now 33. But I do want to point out, though, the document that we provide to all supervisors, it's kind of like an index, and we want it to be lengthy, and we want to basically provide guidance to how to frame allegations to our supervisors. But we don't want either the 500 supervisors and sergeants and lieutenants in the field to classify allegations. We just want them to frame the misconduct for what it is. Mm-hmm. Classification is left to the end, and that's done by my staff. And it's not a perfect, like I said, it's not perfect. We're going to make mistakes, and we strive to eliminate those mistakes and be as good as we can. But we do see that there's some need to look at the guide that we provide to supervisors. It's actually a good time, since we have more allegation classifications now than we did then, to go back and reconcile it and address the issues that are raised by the Inspector General. But I do want to point out, though, as far as the inconsistency, that's why we have the penalty guide. And the penalty guide is what the commanding officers have to look at when they sustain complaints and they attempt to determine what the appropriate penalty is. And that's a lot smaller list. That's the 33 categories that are in the classification guide. Those are correlated exactly.
Right, but if two people have engaged in the same behavior and it's under two different classifications, the penalty guide could have different.
In the penalty guide, they're not listed separately. You won't find that kind of discrepancy in the penalty guide. So it's if you're looking for the type of similar misconduct, the penalty guide lays it out with examples of what that conduct may be. And there is no duplication of effort in different classifications. But should somebody make a mistake, that's why when we review sustained cases where there are penalties, we roundtable them. That includes Chief McCarthy and myself and our captains that are part of internal affairs. We go through it meticulously, and R&E is there, and the questions that we always raise are questions of consistency. Are these the standard penalties that an officer working Harbor would get the same penalty as an officer working Devonshire for the same kind of misconduct? And those are questions, when we bring these cases to the Chief of Police, that he asks of us and insists on us, because he wants to make sure that penalties are consistent, given that their backgrounds are the same, that kind of thing.
Are you comfortable that the investigators who are making these determinations have enough training in the different categorizations?
If you're talking about my R&E people, we only hire people that have significant experience in internal affairs already. So they've usually been investigators. They might have been advocates. They have that experience before we assign them to
So that's
R&E.
on your side. What about on the other side?
Is that my view?
Well, on the not your view, but there's two different groups making these classifications, right? So that's on the internal affairs side, that they are senior, experienced. What about on the investigators who are making the determination up front? Are they getting enough training in these different classifications? Is there something we should be doing in that regard?
We don't ask them to classify it. So the investigators don't classify it. They don't have to make a determination if it's a search violation or an unbecoming conduct. All they need to do is frame the exact conduct, and they shouldn't put in the type of classification in the allegation. That's right. They shouldn't be doing that. We do that strictly on the tail end when we close out complaints.
And then, Commissioner, just so this doesn't go somewhere where it doesn't seem like something that it isn't, you know, I don't really, when they present the cases to me, I'm interested in the conduct, not the classification. You know, a discourteous comment can be extremely serious just because of what the content is, and it can be very minor, you know, just because of the content. So, you know, the classification is important so we can get a general idea of what complaints are, and when you look at them and we can see, well, what's going up, what's going down as a general macro thing. When it comes to penalty, I am concerned with the individual content of the complaint, not so much as broad classification.
Right, and I want to point out, I mean, I agree with the Inspector General. Unbecoming conduct is very broad, and the other very broad category is neglect of duty. Now, when we were negotiating the penalty guide with the Protective League, we were at the tail end of that process when we took a closer look at neglect of duty and unbecoming conduct and what types of allegations have we received requests for public information on, or requests from the commission, or requests from the media, requests from other areas on the department. And we said, maybe we need to take those allegations from unbecoming conduct and neglect of duty and make them separate categories. And we came up with about 9 additional categories. Actually, 4 of them or 5 of them would be subcategories of unbecoming conduct. But because we were at the tail end of the meet and confer, we were already actually in impasse, we would have had to begun anew. So that's still something that we desire to do, because there's a need to take, for example, body-worn video and digital in-car video violations and make that a separate category, so we'll be able to provide that information a little more readily and do an easier search in our automated system to locate it. Right now, it's not a separate violation, so it's just a little more cumbersome for us to provide that data.
Got it.
And that's the purpose of it.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Do we have any comment on this item?
We have 4 comment cards. We have Ted Hayes, Jamie Garcia, Hamid Khan, and Tiffany Guerra.
Mr. Inspector General, I have really no idea what the limits of your power or authority to investigate and make recommendations are. But currently we're standing outside in the baking hot sun because they will not open the overflow room. Here are the rules. The rules indicate that when this room is filled, the overflow room is opened. But they violate that each and every time. And the officers enforce that each and every time. Tiananmen Square, they were protesting. The Chinese brought out the tanks, but the tanks did nothing. In fact, the tanks turned away from the people who were obstructing them. But our problem is with these people, because these people carry out their orders. If there are no weapons of mass destruction, the soldiers still go there, they kill, and they be killed. But that's a lie. But that's what the government did. This government will not allow us to participate in their meetings, even though their rules say they must. Now, there's an ambiguous term they use that says here, whenever the president anticipates. Anticipates? Can he not see the room is filled? Anticipation is a nebulous term. No question about that. But whenever the president anticipates that the number of persons attending the board meeting exceeds the legal whatever, the overflow room must be open. Well, it wasn't open. All right. I have here a newspaper for each and every one of you. It says, activist sues over arrest at commission meeting. $4 million. The city's allocated $100 million they're going to borrow to settle suits. Here we start with the first $4 million that occurred right here in this room when a person was arrested. So if you will, Mr. Sergeant of Arms, see to it they get the paper.
Thank you.
Jamie Garcia.
So I don't really think this is an issue of unbecoming conduct. I think this is really an issue of the 1,600 bias policing complaints that have occurred and 0 have been sustained over the last few years. So basically, we're a community of liars, but let's be very clear about what bias policing is. It's racist policing. And why is LAPD so racist? So let's look at implicit bias and structural bias, right? So if we look at society, society has proven to be racist. There's a history of racism, and we are not in a post-racial society. So your law enforcement comes in with these bias, this anti-blackness. So the nature of this institution increases that bias. So how does it do that, right? The programs. All your programs are based on presumption and speculation. Policing is not based on fact. It's not based on conviction. It is based on issues like behavioral surveillance. So driving while black will get you pulled over. There's another bias policing complaint that will be not sustained. When we look at the suspicious activity reporting, that's all based on behavior. And that's how law enforcement is trained to actually engage with people. If they're doing something that you think is suspicious, engage with them. Think that they're criminals. Think that they're up to terrorist behavior. So you mix the patrol officer's inherent racism, anti-blackness, as they come into this violent institution, you're going to get more racism. You're going to get more bias policing complaints, and you're going to continue to say that none of them are sustained. So the OIG and your report is bullshit. Yeah, thank you. I was going to say take it and shove it, but my colleagues have encouraged me to just speak the truth. So it's not, so we're not going to sit here and say, thank you for this report, thank you for clarifying what unbecoming conduct is. We're going to remind you, 0 sustained. Continually not believing us, 0 sustained. Presumptive, speculative policing, behavioral surveillance, do your homework and learn what it is.
Hamid Khan.
Lies, drug use, insubordination, false imprisonment, false statements, sexual misconduct, neglect of duty, unauthorized use of force, unlawful searches, etc., etc., etc. This is the laundry list of what all of these engage in. All of these engage in, right? But what do we find? We find overwhelmingly 0 sustained. Nothing happens out of this. But the spin in this report is about classification. The spin is not about a violent institution that lies and conspires and completely gets away, literally gets away with murder. So I think that's what we should be focusing on. Because what is happening is that the third leg of the stool, we know the commission, they're the shock absorbers of the system. So to expect anything different was just extremely naive and stupid. We know that the LAPD, the force, it's the most murderous department. It's violent. They lie, they conspire, they kill. And the third leg of the stool is completely complicit, which is the Inspector General. Yes. That who is supposedly supposed to be an independent body. But what do? These are not audits. We need to call them what they are. These are memos. These are administrative memos that are released, because to call this an audit is really a shame to the whole culture of auditing as well. Because nowhere in this report is really what we are talking about, that would there ever be any accountability, would there ever be any justice, because what we are seeing is that they keep on getting away with murders. So I would say just shove this audit.
Tiffany Guerra.
Okay, so my comment is regarding the entire premise of this report. You all looked at the number of complaints issued in 2015, which was $10,599, and you thought the best place to spend your time and resources was to see if the category unbecoming conduct was perhaps too broad. You didn't decide to investigate the fact that just 26 of the 3,300 complaints of unauthorized force were sustained, or just one of the 2,200 complaints of false imprisonment were sustained. You decided that none of that seemed suspicious or of concern. No, you decided instead that it might be worth checking into it to see if the term unbecoming conduct was too broad. That's not what is most suspicious. What we want to know is why thousands of complaints are being filed yearly and such a tiny proportion are being sustained. This report, like all the rest, is useless. Your investigation and your research is useless.
We have no other comment cards on this item.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the Inspector General's report?
So moved.
Do I have a second? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're now on item number 2F, Department's report dated May 17, 2017, relative to the personnel selection criteria and processes audit.
President Johnson, board members.
Good morning.
In front of you, you have the personal selection criteria and processes audit. The audit covered July 13th, 2014 through July 11th, 2015, and it only covered specialized divisions.
Thank you. Excuse me, can you identify yourself for the record?
I'm sorry, Lieutenant Kelly Arnett, A-R-N-E-T-T. Sorry, audit division. We looked at 7 main objectives: the selection package, commander officer's rationale, candidates' disciplinary history, completion of the interview worksheets, and then we also looked at candidate attributes, diversity among the selected and non-selected candidates, and the diversity among the selection board members. The department did well in objections 1 through 4, with room for improvement related to reviewing of the packages and the interview worksheets. Objectives 5 through 7 measured non-mandated goals, and the department, we just need to look a little bit closer on board diversity. Do you have any questions?
How often is this audit done? Is it done every 2 years?
I believe this is the first one we've done. Hello. My name is Monica Strader, and I work Audit Division 2. This is the first one we've done, and we were going to do initially department-wide all the divisions, but because it was such a huge audit population, we decided to proceed with just specialized divisions, and with the consideration of the next one being only areas.
Only areas will be the
Yeah,
next
for
one?
the next one.
Any other questions? Any comment on this item?
We have none, sir.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the department's report?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you. We're now on item number 2G, Department's report dated May 12, 2017, relative to the budget modification for the 2015.
So I don't think we need a report on this.
Oh, we do have a card, though.
Oh, we have a card on it.
We'll just call the card Terry Allen Wilburn.
In the final call, there's 80% of children who are serving life who were of color in Alabama, Georgia, Illinois, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, South Carolina. Out of these people, of 700,000 children are being convicted of crimes, or they're being bribed by our citizens and then murdered. They be taken up to the ski area, or they be taken up to Sacramento to learn how to climb mountains. My first engagement in this these people who are doing these children injustice, we have not looked at. Although there are entertainers who are using children under the age of 17 through 5 years of age. They are being in another city as older than they are really originally are. If you get a girl 13 or 15-year-old on Billboard, she's claiming that she's 23 to 27 years of age, but she's only 13. Where in the entertainment of Net, who was just built, which I own, may I continue?
For a couple
Which I
more
own.
seconds.
And these children came back who was kidnapped from Chicago and very other places. They needed a place to be entertained or be entertainers, but not to go out into another district or county or another country to place bombs and things of that nature.
All right. Thank you, sir, for your
Brainwash. Thank you.
We have no other comment cards on this item.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the department's report?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. We're now on item number 3, report of the Chief of Police, Chief Beck.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Chief.
A couple of things to comment on. First, obviously, the act of terrorism that occurred in Manchester, United Kingdom. The department is looking at this as well as the entire law enforcement community in the United States to look for ways that we can learn from what happened there and take preventative steps in our own jurisdictions. Obviously, we are increasing the police presence at large public events. We've been deploying our canine bomb detection dogs at some of those, and we'll look at everything this weekend to make sure that it's adequately staffed. This morning at about 5:15, Central Traffic motor officer on his way to work on the I-5 freeway at about Lyons lost control of his motorcycle when he hit a large blue tarp that had blown out of a truck. He was run over by a vehicle, suffered severe injuries. I went to visit him at Henry Mayo Hospital this morning. He's going to undergo multiple surgeries. We're very, very concerned about his physical state. His family is being flown down from Sacramento. Go ahead.
Another word, and you're going to be asked to leave. It's unbelievably offensive what you're saying.
I don't care if
Okay.
police get killed.
Can you please
I don't
can you
care if
please
police
leave?
get killed.
Can you please leave? You've disrupted the meeting now multiple times. You need to leave the room, please.
You need to be a better brother. You need to stop.
This meeting is not continuing until you leave the room.
I have that much power? If that's the case, then you need to release. Sorry, I got to listen to my community. So y'all can either get out like you do every time or behave better. Do what the people say. Do what the people say.
You need to leave the room.
Then remove me. You got all these police here. I want them to show them that you guys are so insecure that you will remove a disabled person for voicing her disapproval of the LA Police Department.
If you want to voice your disapproval, you have ample opportunity to submit a card. We are not continuing this meeting while you are in the room.
You don't listen. There's no point in going through this kind of discourse.
Okay, we're going to take a recess and we're going to clear the entire room.
Goodbye, Uncle Tom. Goodbye, Uncle Tom. And you're only there to take the cushion for the white people. How come none of these old crackers don't get up and talk? They make you two black people do all of the work. They make y'all do the heavy lifting. And shame on y'all for letting them punk y'all like that. Is that check that good? It ain't that good. Board of Police Commissioners are in recess. If you do not leave the room voluntarily, you will not be readmitted when the room is reopened. We're asking all department personnel to go to the hallways and everyone else to leave the room. If you do not leave voluntarily, you will not be readmitted.
and I'm not even saying lame, I'm just saying you're scummy. A bunch of snowflakes. I'm telling you, woo, welcome to the snowstorm. I should have brought my jacket. Yeah. This is the second time. Every time I come here, they shut it down. Every time I say something. Because I think he's prejudiced against disabled people. Whenever I speak up,
All persons remaining after this time will not be readmitted when the commission reconvenes.
So? And you can hug him too, lady. You know what? I survived cancer too, short-haired lady. Sandra, I survived cancer. And you know what cancer made me do? It made me work hard for justice. Cancer made me want to work my behind off. Yeah. Appropriate. That's collusion. It's collusion. I don't care, police die. If you don't care, my people die. I can give a crap if your
I am Lieutenant Caldera, police officer for the City of Los Angeles. I hereby declare this an unlawful assembly. In the name of the police, the people of the state of California, command all those assembled at 100 West Police Commission Boardroom to immediately disperse, which means to break up this assembly and exit this building. If you do not do so, you may be arrested or subject to other police action. Other police action can include the use of force, which may inflict significant pain or result in serious injury. Penal Code Section 409 prohibits remaining present at an unlawful assembly. If you remain in this area, just as described, regardless of your purpose, you will be in violation of Penal Code Section 409. The following routes of dispersal are available: the rear door or through the lobby to the First Street. You have 15 minutes to disperse.
I have artificial limbs throughout my body. I am incapable of harming anyone. As a matter of fact, I don't even have fingerprints.
Yes. $15. Didn't say that.
I am the granddaughter of a man who was killed by the New Orleans Police Department. My grandfather, Billy Delton Jr., was killed by the New Orleans Police Department when my mother was 5 years old. So as far as I'm concerned, if y'all hadn't done that, you never would have met me. You know, and that's the thing about police. You guys are like, you're here with guns. I came here with a cell phone and my car keys and my wallet. That's it. Because that's all I need. And this guy here wanna be Tom Selleck. I bet you got a small penis. I know, man, this is so like, you know, I bet you Freud, no, Freud was tripped out too. But you know what I'm saying. He thinks the man doth protest too much. And I'm not protesting enough. As long as y'all killing people, I feel like I should be here every Tuesday or whatever day y'all want to have this kabuki theater of justice. So that's all it is. And for the Asian law enforcement in here, don't forget the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882. Don't forget the Japanese internment that happened right here in California. If you think you are safe from these white people, you are not. If you are Hispanic on the law enforcement, you think you are safe from these people, you are not. They will lock your ass up. And me, I'm black. I already had people in my family killed, and I'm not scared to be here. And if my voice is that disturbing to you, that really makes me sad, because I think I have a pretty voice, you know? And I used to sing in concert choir and all kinds of stuff. But, you know, and this guy here, I bought your suit, old crackle. And normally I don't talk to old people like that, but fuck you and fuck all police, and I don't give a shit when y'all get hurt. I could care less. I've had over 70 operations. You think I give a shit when police get hurt? Fuck y'all. Come on, I thought y'all supposed to get rid of me. Don't y'all want to be seen dragging a disabled person out of here? Come on, you got to prove that your job is worth what you do. If you really have a righteous job, then you have no compunction about grabbing a disabled woman and yanking her out of a room.
minutes.
How many minutes?
13.
You know what? You got a really high voice. You sound like you don't have balls either. He said 13, but actually it's not 13. Excuse me. Oh, that's how much time I have left? I have 13 minutes left?
So let's not talk to them.
Okay.
Let's talk to each other.
Oh. Last night, but I don't want to stay here in front of y'all. But I had an epiphany while I was sitting there medicating myself, which I am legally allowed to do as a disabled person. And
so let's talk about what are some of the things that we need to be really organizing around.
Okay.
So the sheriff's road is a big thing, and of course the LAPD is really just itching to use their road. The sheriff was supposed to come out with their civilian oversight commission this Thursday, which they are not. But the sheriff's civilian oversight commission, so they are supposed they're mandated to come back with recommendations for the use of drones. Our demand is that absolutely no drones at all. The drones they need to be kicked out of any of these military arsenals. So if people can show up on Thursday morning at the sheriff's civilian oversight commission and let them know very clearly the meeting is at 9:30 at the DWP building.
Is the Department of Water?
The Department of Water Power. I think it's 800 this Thursday, 800 Alameda Street. It's building right on the freeway. The meeting is going to be downstairs in the community room, and we want to be very clear. We want to come up with absolutely no policy, no protocol, because we know what's going on. So that's yeah. So this is so we want to say
everything you want to say.
Okay, so we want to get a clear message out to the community that the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department is using drones and people absolutely oppose it. We went out and we did a whole petition drive, we were signatures, drones. This coming Thursday, May 25th at 9:30 in the morning, the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department Civilian Oversight Commission is having its meeting. This Thursday, May 25th at 9:30 in the morning.
What's the address?
The address is either 700 or 800 Alameda. WP building facing 101 freeway.
Oh, okay.
Right. And then following the water. Yeah, MWD, whatever that is. Yeah. So please come out there. The second piece, what we also want to let people know that how policing is changing, how, I mean, the same old type of things, but new tactics, how LAPD is very aggressively using predictive policing. And the LAPD laser program. Predictive policing includes both place-based policing, meaning that they basically criminalize the whole community and neighborhoods, and they create these hotspots where they every 12 hours, and they keep on launching more and more patrol cars over there. And these hotspots are supposedly built upon previous data. So now the problem is if the previous data is flawed, what's going to come out is going to be is flawed as well. The previous data that made people there report some crime going on there.
Order somebody else to be arrested, T-Bank, or you say that when we're about our TV on the session?
Yeah, that's going to be for everybody. And the other piece is the program is called LASER, the Los Angeles Strategic Extraction and Restoration Program. That is a person-based program. So what they're doing is they're issuing these notices, which are basically known as crime defender bulletins, which they release. They're in the patrol car. They're kind of like most wanted bulletins.
Yeah, this looks like
and people are targeted. That's exactly what it is. Now these individuals are not committing any acts. Nothing at all. It's all based on speculative policing. So they use this whole language of computer-based and data-driven and evidence-based technology, but it's basically masking the racism. It's masking racist policing. It's masking the assault and the violence that is going on. We have several instances in the community. There's a case right now of Michael Bodie, who's going through his arrest. I mean, the person was supposedly a former gang member, but this is like you are in perpetuity criminalized. You're in perpetuity the community's pathology as a criminal. So what do we see? We see the same thing. We see the same thing that how the suspicious activity reporting program worked out, which is supposed to be a counterterrorism program. But when you look at the facts, when you look at the numbers, One of the audits 2 years ago of the Inspector General showed that over 30% of these secret files identified individuals as black. In a city that has 9.4% black population, exactly. And by gender was identified, over 50% of these files identified as women, black women. So now it's the same old, impact, same old criminalization, same old violence, same old lies, same old conspiracies, but with these new tools.
What about people who get their records expunged? Are they still in these criminal databases?
Yeah, they're forever in these. I mean, the record expunged.
You don't even get to know if you're in there, right?
I mean,
it's like secret police stuff.
We've seen, but this is secret police. This is the police state how it operates. We've seen what happened with the Cal Gang database. I don't know if you all know about that.
No.
So in 2016, last year, the state of California Cal Gang database was audited. In that, they identified that 46 individuals were less than a year old who were in the gang database.
Less than, how can you
9-month-old babies in gang databases. And this is California, state of California own audit. And in that, they had 26 of those who were self-professed gang members.
A baby can say that?
Baby, 9-month-old babies, they're claiming that they're self-professed gang members. These are the people. These are the people who are doing this work here. These are gang databases. So this is the kind of stuff that is going on in the community. So that's what we've been saying, that before the bullet hits the body, what is that trajectory? What is the landscape that is being created? How are people being criminalized? How is that contact taking place between law enforcement and the
Oh my God, now they can shoot from helicopters.
Well, the LAPD, you can guess yourself, the LAPD gets 54% of the general funds of the city. And then when you look at federal grants, there's a grant called the Urban Area Security Initiative, right? Los Angeles and Long Beach area, since 2003, has received close to $1 billion. LAPD and other law enforcement agencies, $950 million from these federal grants. That is separate from the city budget.
You know what?
Last year, LAPD paid $81 million in lawsuit settlements. It doesn't come out of the LAPD's budget. It's coming out directly from the city. We are responsible for their violence. We are responsible for the murder.
Oh, so we're victims are responsible for their victimization. I learned so much whenever, you know what, I just want to say, Mr. Khan, you, Miss Pauline, I mean, all of y'all, I learned so much whenever you guys are around, and I'm very grateful. But I just really appreciate you guys, and now I got to bounce. And I'm a member of another group, Cal Life. You know, yo, crippled people in the house.
See you later.
Oh, I'll be around. I'll be back. My sense of humor don't quit just because police are full of shit. No, they ain't gonna bother me. They ain't gonna bother me. That's one of the perks of being back.
Yeah, we're leaving.
Oh, y'all need to leave. Walk with my group. Okay.
I'm trying to put a moving target on you, so we're already together.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
They come at you, they're gonna have to come at us. We got 4 minutes.
Oh, okay. Then I can be very inconvenient.
Not too much time either.
What's his name? What's your name? The guy with the camera?
His name is Guy with the Camera.
What's
name is Ortega.
Oh, he's the one who knows my sister. Tomorrow. Because she told me you were Latino, but you look white. And she said, do you know Dr. Abdullah? And you said, I can't stand her. That's my sister. Isn't that right, tomorrow? Are you watching tomorrow? She's watching. Wow. Yeah.
You trying to get Negro.
Officer Ortega. Officer Ortega.
Ortega.
Sir, Officer Ortega. Can you speak?
No.
What do you disagree with Dr. As far as Dr. Abdullah? Give us a sentence. Describe what you disagree with.
I can't.
Officer Ortega, why don't you describe what you disagree with Dr. Abdullah on?
We have 2 minutes, 40 seconds.
Thank you. Why is the camera on her stomach?
On his stomach?
Yeah, isn't that weird? That's very
Why is it you can't get us? Why is that?
Because it's before his boy. That shit share.
Doesn't he believe in something? What do you believe in, Officer Ortega, that you're upset with Dr. Abdullah? Look at
If you believe in something, you wouldn't be up there.
This is the point we need to.
Stop filming me in the stomach.
I know, it's not a good look, bro. I don't care. I lost 10 pounds, so go ahead. I've been eating bean sprouts and crap.
I know I need to.
I'm sorry, I'm saying that. I got 400 years of Louisiana fighting against that.
All right.
Y'all don't know, for me, this is a vacation.
Did you have anything to say, sir?
Because this is the only time you get to get it out.
No.
If you say anything any
Think
other
about that.
time, you little punk ass, be ready to kill somebody. Chinese exclusion act.
Getting all up in your feelings.
And Japanese.
Getting in your feelings. You probably be
They
drinking
brought
about.
opium into
Yeah.
opium dens to try to break down the population.
That's the reason why I brought opium
know your
dens.
name.
That's
You're
what I'm saying.
You're talking about publicly. I didn't even know who you were.
Everywhere we go, people want to know who we are, so we tell them, we are the people, the mighty, mighty people, fighting for justice, fighting to end the violence.
Lights on 7. Wanna be
Everywhere we go,
Fire Charlie Beck. Fire Charlie Beck. Fire Charlie Beck. Fire Charlie Beck. Fire Charlie Beck.
So these folks that are really can't come back.
They cannot be because they didn't leave. Richard may know who walked that.
So they can't come back.
They can't, but the other people who actually
Oh,
come
okay.
at that time can.
Because these last
If they're
ones
still
should
there.
have to come back in. Because they didn't leave when they were out.
I thought that was hilarious when T-Fax said that maybe it's just your.
We were waiting all the time just to adjourn.
Hmm?
We were waiting all the time just
What else? What do I need to do? Do I need to take a motion?
No, it was the chief's report.
Chief's report. Okay.
Oh.
Okay. Any public comment? Any comment on the chief's report?
We have 3 comment cards, and none of these people are present.
And for the record, the room was cleared and there are no members of the public.
Okay, we're now on item number 4, public comment period. We have comment cards, and there's no one present. We're now on item number 5, closed session items. We have none. Mr. President, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Okay.
Thank you. Well, that was productive.
Hi, I'm Jen Mahoney in Studio City. You're watching LA City View Channel 35, where you can get the best in culture and arts. It's our city, it's our channel.
Hey, just go!
The more we get together, the more we get together, the happier we'll be. 'Cause your friends are my friends and my friends are your friends. The more we get together, the happier we'll be.
I'd like to welcome